It's very cliche, but the partnership word is what we fully believe here. And that only works when we're both aligned. Think about a tree removal company at your house. They got done with the job and then they give you an invoice and it's twice what they originally quoted you. Even if you pay it, you would never work with that person again. Our goal is to catch all scope increases early as we can.
You're just wasting money if you don't get your messaging right. What do you want someone to think, feel, and do when they watch this?
This is Between Two Pixels, the podcast for anyone who wants to reach and connect with their audience through content and marketing.
Welcome to this episode of the Between Two Pixels podcast. This is a podcast for anyone who wants to reach and connect with their audience through marketing and content. My name is Josh Peters. I'm one of the owners of Between Pixels, and today I am joined by Jimmy Vann, Jimmy James Vann.
Another gray-haired pixel.
Another gray-haired pixel. If I don't know, if you're listening to this and you're not watching it, you don't realize that people mistake us for being related.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I remember my 40th birthday party, someone was like, "Is that your brother?" And I was like, "No."
I started going with it at this point. Yeah.
At this point, you basically
always wanted a brother. Right. I spend more time with him than my family.
Do you have a brother?
I don't. Sister.
Okay.
Just a sister, younger sister.
I don't have a sister. I feel like we've learned something.
We have. It's only been 8 years.
I now have a sister.
No, we do get that a lot. And recently you were mistaken for Mac Powell.
Mac Powell.
From Third Day.
They're like, "You look like someone." That's not the first time that's happened. Someone was like, "You look familiar. Are you Mac Powell?" That happened to me at a coffee shop. I saw two people talking and they came up and were like, "Sorry, my wife just wants to ask if you're Mac Powell." And I was like, "No, but I have shot a music video for Third Day."
They're like, I don't know what that means, but can I get a picture?
Exactly. But
cool.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone even knows who Mac Powell is, but
no, I did, but that goes back to the gray hair.
Yeah, we are in Atlanta. It's basically just like church world here,
right.
But so that's a good introduction to understand us, a little bit about us.
Mm-hmm.
But I will say, for people that don't know what you do here at Between Pixels, so you run our video services department.
That's right.
Director of video services. And then we have a director of marketing services, and we have a director of like live and events and stuff. So just for people trying to understand how this works, you basically are responsible for running the video services department.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime we do something related for video, it's going to go through you. So let's just talk a little bit about just like that context. Yeah. So what's your background? How did you even end up here? And then, let's why are you qualified to do this? I'm actually just wondering.
Yeah.
Because I didn't actually ever interview you.
Well, you
just showed up on my doorstep. I was like,
I'll
take
like
it.
Interview. Yeah.
You're like the stork dropped you off.
Well, I don't know. I showed up in a rainstorm, completely soaked. And I remember that. I remember that well. So my background is video. I mean, I obviously love sports, and so it was kind of one of those things. When I was younger, I saw NFL films. I was like, that's what I want to do. I want to go make that, and I didn't at the time know what that was. Obviously, internet streaming, none of that stuff existed, but ended up going to school for production. So at that time, big schools around here, Georgia, Kennesaw, they didn't have much of a production company. They had people who knew how to do it. But oddly enough, most of those people came from the school that I went to, which is Chattahoochee Tech, located in Marietta. And the guy who ran that was former director at the news station. So he, really taught us a lot. But the whole time, all I knew is I wanted to get an internship. I knew if I could get in the door as an intern, I could get a job. And so he, along with somebody else, connected me, got into a local sports station that's no longer there, that did a nightly kind of sports center type show. Mm-hmm. Did that for a while, but the way that place was structured, somebody had to basically leave for a spot to open. And, but I was like, I want the director, I want the producer of the senior producer. I want them all to know my name. I want them to at least know who this intern is. So I was sweeping floors of a studio. I was setting up cameras for the nightly show. I was typing scripts into prompters.
Mm-hmm. We've all done it.
Yeah. And that's the easiest way to get yelled at.
Setting up the Chiron.
Yep, exactly. So all that kind of stuff. I was like, I just want to find something that I could do. So along that path, I made some relationships ended up meeting someone who said, hey, we don't have a spot here, but I know a guy. And so I kind of led me into a world of doing kind of what we do now. A lot of story-based videos that were sports centered.
Gotcha.
So it was on, interviews.
Meaning they're on Sports Center?
Meaning they could have been, yeah. So mostly a lot of the stories that they would show during a game. So if you're watching a football game and they say, hey, this guy's got a great story, thanks his mom for getting him here. We were the company that they would hire us to go produce that video for them.
And I'll have to say, for all the non-sports fans, like, this is the reason why, like, I spent a season of my adult life not watching sports. I regret that part of my life, because now I'm like so into it. And I always try to explain to my wife, like, no, you don't understand. I have to watch this game because you don't understand the backstory. Like, he was hurt, and then this happened, and then like he got traded, and he's playing the team that traded him because they didn't want him, but now they're like really good. And it's like, you have this
He
whole
shouldn't
thing.
even be here right now.
He shouldn't even be here. And so like there's so many things like that where the content and the story, and I've seen them do that way more. It's like both the NBA and the NFL are basically like reality shows at this point.
That's what gets the people who are not like us watching, the people who are not into the X's and O's of it. But yeah, so we did a lot of that, which was really cool. That taught me how to, tell a story, how to shoot, how to edit all of it together, because it was just me and my producer, who was also the owner of that company. But then he was connected with a live sports company out in California, out in LA. And so we kind of married the two, and we would start doing a lot of, when streaming became more popular, we would go and we'd set up the actual live productions. So it was a lot of running cable, setting up audio, running handheld camera for volleyball, on the beaches of California, which sounds really cool. And at the time it was neat, but some of the hardest work you can do.
Try to get sand out of your camera bag.
Sunburn, and you're like, it was, so we did a lot of that, but during, that whole production, I would also go and I'd sit down with one of the volleyball players, and we'd shoot their stories, and didn't take long before I realized I wanted to get in the truck. Yeah. And so I learned the replay machine, and that was kind of the thing that I probably did the most. I ended up running replay for quite 3 or 4 years doing all that. And then as kid number 2 came, traveling to California every other 4 days, became kind of a grind. And I remember being in the airport, and Wilkie, our buddy,
our friend who I went to high school and college with, Wilkie.
Yep.
And he was a replay person. He still is.
Among
having his own production company too.
Yeah.
I guess so. You were telling him something.
Well, I don't know. I can't remember if I told him in person or if we were just texting, but I remember being in the airport, and he was like, hey, I was kind of telling him, hey, not that I don't like doing this, but I just want to stay home. I want to be in Atlanta. I feel like Atlanta was such a there's so much opportunity. There's as much opportunity here as there are other places. So why not just try to find a niche here? And I failed to mention, at the time I was also shooting weddings when I wasn't doing that stuff, just on my own, which easy money but brutal, on the schedule. So it's like every Saturday, Sunday, you get good at it, and people are wanting their videos turned around really quick. You're having to edit and shoot, and then so it was it was kind of me learning how to be a businessman, but also trying to do what I do. And so anyway, Wilkie said, I got a friend, an old college roommate that has a company, and I think they're looking for somebody right now.
Well, I think that's a really good background on you and kind of the context of like where you came from, because like I have a similar background, and it really plays into this discussion today. So you and I were talking about what can we do for our next podcast episode, and we wanted to do some things around video. And you kind of brought up this idea of like how to work best with an agency. Mm-hmm. So thinking about this for our clients. So if someone's listening to this and, they're in the marketing department of their company, or maybe in corporate communications or HR or whatever it is, and they're trying to figure out how to work with an agency, because maybe they have worked with people like us in the past. We have a lot of clients that come to us that have been burned from working with contractors. Not to hate on contractors, but it's similar to like
a bad experience.
Yeah, and what that's like to be juggling all these other clients, staying up all night trying to render files for one client, get up in the morning, do some other thing, and sometimes it's not that contractor's fault that the client didn't get what they wanted, that was off brand or whatever it is. But that does oftentimes these bigger companies end up working with either an agency of record, or they end up working with a groupings of agencies that do different stuff. So we thought it would be kind of fun to do a podcast episode around how to best work with an agency, kind of give some tips and some thoughts on how to get maybe the most for your dollar from an agency. Because I know a lot of clients also have nightmares stories where they got taken for a lot of money.
Yeah.
I know, I don't want to say all the names, but we definitely have clients that have come to work with us that
you can tell me afterwards.
Yeah, exactly. That are really resistant to even being on like a content plan or retainer type model with us because they've been burned in the past. So let's kind of set the stage. So tell me, why do you think it's important to have this discussion, and why on the topic of working best with agencies, and like why is that important for a client to know?
We need to find ways to almost like educate in a way with the client, but do it in a way that's early enough and not during the project or as the problem's happening or some of the strain, because like I said, it's very cliche, but the partnership word is what we fully believe here. And that only works when we're both aligned and both on the same page. Because, the main goal that I've always said is we want to be an extension of, we want almost you to feel like we're your in-house agency that's not in-house,
Right.
And that's how on the same page we are. So just as we would need to know certain things about your company and your message and how you work and the best way to work with you, we want to be able to tell you, here's some of the things to make sure that your project has no hiccups. Ultimately helps the back end. It helps your project. It helps us get it done on time and it look the way you want.
Yeah. I mean, and so there's the side of it is like working with us, which, obviously there's like, we have our processes and whatnot. And I think our situation can be a little bit different because, we've talked about on this podcast before, our content program, how that works. So, if you haven't listened to that episode, it's basically a retainer with accountability. So it's like, it's not, sometimes retainers are just like endless pits of things where hours just disappear, and you just clients kind of feel like I pay for something and don't get much back.
Right.
I'm paying to reserve time or whatever. And what we do with the content plans is we lay out the whole year, we map every deliverable to a price point, and then that creates a annual budget. And then as we deliver those things that are in the plan, they get checked off. So there is accountability. There actually is a certain amount that we're working from that relates to a certain amount of credits, and those credits are based on a rate that the client gets based on volume, so they get a volume discount. Right. So that's very different. So it's because of that, we are very much interested in that partnership arrangement that you were talking about. So that's just like provide a little bit of context for folks around how we work and whatnot.
And it's like the whole goal is to kind of build like trust.
To
build the trust between you and us and you, and if that's there, I mean, the everything benefits.
Yeah, exactly. So just to kind of back it out a little bit wider, so what advice would you provide to someone who maybe is in a marketing position at a company, and they're trying to figure out, maybe make that transition from working with contractors like you and I used to be to working with an agency partner? Because the risk is lower if you're going to work with contractors. But when you start working with an agency, if you start treating an agency like so, and I don't want to say that people treat contractors bad, but we both know that if you're a contractor, you don't have a lot of leverage. You're happy to be working for that brand. You're like, I just don't want to screw this up. Like, this is a great.
And you will typically say yes to things you might not.
Yes.
You should have probably said no to, just because you're not equipped to handle it.
And you're a one-man show a lot of times, or maybe it's just you and a few people. So it's easy to adapt and pivot. And like you said, we can stay up all night. We can render stuff. We can get going the next day. So we're just usually just saying yes. But when you make that transition from hiring a bunch of independent people to work on stuff for you, for your brand or your business or whatever organization, and you come over here and you start working with agencies, if you treat those agencies like you treated those contractors, you might end up with some bad situations.
Right.
Maybe it's like your projects are out of scope. You're paying more than you need to. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of things. So talk a little bit about that and how agencies are different than contractors and what the process is like on the back end.
Yeah. And I can't speak for all agencies, obviously, but I know one of the things I try to kind of establish here, and this is something I've always just thought, is if you are, in a marketing department somewhere, whether it be a very large company or a very, a smaller company, and you come to us, we know right off the bat that you have been trusted on your end with whatever budget this is to make a good decision. And so that's first and foremost. We understand you have people that are counting on you to make a good choice as to who to partner with to produce this content. And so we go into this saying, we've got your back. Like, this is kind of, we understand that. Okay, we got that established. We know we have to do our job so that you do your job in a way. And so we want to make sure that's kind of where that partnership trust thing kind of comes in off the bat. Once that gets established, that there are a lot of things that working with maybe even other video production companies. Maybe it's a lot more than just a one person show. Maybe it's a company full, like with a smaller company. There's a lot of stuff that we're going to ask up front, that we're going to want up front. They might not have ever asked you. So you're not really prepared. I don't know what I don't know what that message is.
I don't know the target audience.
I don't know the target. We never have deadlines for this.
Well, yeah, and to piggyback on that, I'll say one of the things that if you're going to work with an agency, if the agency doesn't give you some type of like intake form or like a discovery call or whatever, you need to present a discovery document to that agency. Meaning, like, you need to know target audience, you need to know intention. So like if it is at an event, who's in the audience? Who's this for?
Right.
What's the runtime going to be? We just produced a big thing for an event, and we got 3/4 of the way through it, and we were like, how long is this supposed to be?
Right.
And we realized that we were moving so fast because they needed it in 2 weeks. We never asked how long it was supposed to be. We just looked at the script and we're like, okay, I look at the script, I kind of understand what they're going for. But once we realized what was missing from the conversation, we were like, oh wait, hold on a second, clarification. What's the runtime of this?
Right.
You know?
Exactly.
And so it's really important to kind of, because I will say, if you've worked with contractors in the past, they don't always ask those questions because, like you said, as a contractor, you're going like, all right, I'll do whatever you want me to do if you're going to pay me to do it, especially if you're a big brand.
Right.
You're so thrilled to be working on something bigger. So, at the same time, it's like, make sure you're protecting yourself and you're going ahead and providing some type of brief, some type of like background,
as much as you can.
As you can. We need more information, the better. Runtime, delivery, all of that, audience, pain points. Like, we have a whole intake and kind of discovery document we go through where probably a lot of clients aren't used to answering these questions, and sometimes they don't even understand why they have to answer them. We're like, tell us about your audience, tell us about their pain points, tell us about, what do you want someone to think, feel, and do when they watch this?
Right.
Yep. And all of those things, like, they really do help us understand, like, answer some of those nuanced questions, because we have to communicate those things to our team, and our editors will ask, like, what is this thing for?
What's the vision?
You have to be able to carry that vision from the client to the editor and then pitch it to them and let them understand how to deliver it.
And so there's the vision component, like you were just hitting on, which was awesome. And then there's the like technical aspects of the project. So it's hard because it's like, what is, like, if budget is a big thing, it's like, we can't go over this. Don't be afraid to ask, what are some of these, how does what I'm requesting, how's this request impact the budget? Like, don't be afraid to kind of ask those questions and start that conversation early on. So we can say, because of what ends up happening is, if that does, then we can, we're trying to protect your budget here. And we also want to make sure we're giving you a great product. There's kind of like there's a lot of that stuff that needs to be worked out early.
When I say in different agencies, like, and just talking to clients, about protecting yourself, protecting your budget, different agencies work different ways. Like, there are agencies that they're not ashamed to charge more or go over budget, and just be like, yeah, well, it was more. So, you wanted more, so we did more.
Right.
Here's your bill.
Exactly.
And it's like, okay, we never talked about this. So we're like really, really strict about like, we don't move forward unless there's a scope increase and then the client knows about it, and we communicate that back, and we're like, all right, hey, we will accommodate. But now we've kind of like, we pass into a scope thing. So if you want that, then we have to do this.
If you think about other things that you may get, a tree removal company at your house or something, any kind of thing. If you got done with what you thought with the job, if they got done with the job and then they give you an invoice and it's twice what they originally quoted you, even if you pay it, you would never work with that person again.
Yeah.
If that was their attitude, well, I'm sorry, you asked for 5 more trees or whatever.
Yeah.
Here's the invoice, pay me, kind of a thing.
Yeah, but you never told me they were going to be more.
Yeah. You would never work with that, and that is the opposite of what we want. Every single person that comes in here to do video marketing and work with us, we want it to be repeat work, just because it makes it so much better. Each project gets better. The process gets better because we understand you. You trust us. We trust you. It's that's that relationship. And that's kind of our goal for every client. So if we started a project and then it goes over scope and we didn't tell you, or we had no way of catching it early enough to explain it, because things do happen. But our goal is to catch all scope increases early as we can, so we can say, hey, here's what's happening. Here's how we can move forward. Here's how we can avoid that and move forward. And I think, and that's probably one of the most challenging parts, at least for the producers here. That's probably the hardest thing about their job is tracking those, because scope increases come from so many places. A lot of time in filming, oftentimes in post. But it's understanding whenever if you do have to have scope conversations, it's because we have the best interest of your budget and your project in mind. It's not because we're saying, hey, found some other ways to make some money off this project. That's not what we do. That's the opposite of what we want to do, because we're never going to do anything that benefits us for that one. We want the benefit is having you as a long-term partner. Yeah. That's the thing. And having those sometimes awkward scope conversations early, that's on us. That's our responsibility to be able to catch, oh, they've asked for this. That's going to mean this. Let's talk to so-and-so, make sure they understand. And if they don't want to move forward, let's have a solution for how to avoid that. And that's it. But that's, at the end of the day, we've provided you with the best possible service we can. And hopefully you'll come back understanding that we're not here just to take money. That's not, that's not how you run a business. It's just not, and definitely not how we run it here.
Well, this next one, I think kind of just piggybacks on what you were just saying. But so in working with us, maybe you could pull from your experience of like where this has happened with clients, but reducing the impact of like scope increases. So like, imagine you're giving advice to a friend who is a marketer, and they want to hire an agency or production company or whatever. What advice would you give to them to avoid going over scope on a project?
Don't feel like you need to come with a vision and all of the creative already tied up and say, here, go do that. Because part of what you're getting, part of what you're paying for between pixels is that creative. Don't feel like you have to come with everything, examples, all these things. Examples are great to show us, oh, this is what they have in mind. This is the style they're looking for. That's perfectly fine. You know?
And I'll even say too, I mean, even if they don't know the message, like we can help figure that out. I think that's one of the things that we're very good at is if you just tell us your business goal, you tell us like, I mean, kind of like you kind of alluded to it, but it's like, say someone's doing something for an event, promo or whatever, and they're like, we want to do this. And then we might ask them questions and say, okay, well, would you want anything for, social? Like we just did something like that for Dante. Yeah. And it's exactly. Like, it was supposed to be just a overview video for this company that's technology based, with AI and drones and that kind of thing. Yeah. And so we're like, start with simple interviews for this overview, and all of a sudden it's like, actually, we need all this other stuff. So we just start pegging like all this other stuff right onto the list, of that shoot day.
Right.
But, if we had just taken our marching orders and gone with it, it probably wouldn't have leveraged as much of that budget as it possibly could. So that's another thing too, is just to kind of step back, think about that big picture stuff, and how you can leverage the most of your dollar, really.
I love it when that you said the AI and the drones and stuff. I think that I love it when a client comes to us and they know that it's hard to explain what they do to their best friend or to their spouses.
We were like, this is like our niche. It's like things that don't exist, and it's like these like startups in technology, and they're like, there's no product, but we just need to make a video about it.
Or you get soot blowers for paper mills, and I'm like, I've never heard of this. You get these multi-million-dollar companies that provide or manufacture something that everyone in the world needs. No one knows it exists, and and we get a lot of those.
Oh man, some of the stuff we've done that you've really like done a lot with in that B2B space, where it's like, I'm like, I didn't even know, like exactly what you're saying. I didn't even know this was a thing. And with these, the technology companies are a big piece of it, but some of those things are also physical products that they're serving. Refrigerator door handles
for restaurants.
The boxes that go in the ground that like keep all the electrical wires from getting run over by cars.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank. We have like a huge portfolio of like these industrial and like B2B things that we've communicated their messaging for. That's a great example of a company who needs to work with an agency that could work with a contractor if they wanted. But it's like, if you get this wrong, like you're just wasting money if you don't get your messaging right, because it is a very specific audience group.
Exactly.
And if we ask those questions, like, your audience is not a normal person. Your audience is an engineer.
Right.
Or a, construction person or an architect or a, they have sometimes, like with our relationship with the Cutie Brands Lighting, it's like their audience can be a larger group of people. It can be anyone at like an architectural firm. It can be a designer. It can be like another agency owner that owns a lighting business that wants to use this product versus another one.
Right.
And you have to ask those questions, because, if you don't, you end up making a video that has to be remade because you didn't get it right.
Yeah. So. And it does at the end of the day for us, a lot of the time, I won't say that's stupid. That's coach speak. End of the day.
At the end of the day.
End of the day.
All right, guys, circle up.
Offense, defense,
Circle
special
up.
teams, man. That's how it works here. But what I always say is like, are we filming something, or is this all graphics? Let's start there, and let's construct how we're going to do the video. And then as we go through that, we'll start to understand the message more, especially if we're writing a script, we have to. It's nice to have those introductions. Like I said, when a client's like, okay, let me tell you a little bit about what we do. I almost know for a fact this is going to take a second, because it's an industry that they know they may have been in for 50 years. Maybe their grandparents started the company and it's just blossomed into this really large organization. And but they still understand this isn't something that everybody knows about. So let me tell you a little bit about it. And they'll send us some videos, and some of them might have been homemade, or some of them might have been made years ago. And they always say, these are bad, but I'm like, I don't care. They at least show me who you are. Yeah. We're going to make new videos. Don't worry about that. Yeah. I want to see, because so if you are in an industry that is hard, if you have a hard time explaining it to your friends, you'll probably have a hard time explaining it to us. But our goal, because of, like you said, the discovery documents, story framework, is to kind of dig that message out. We may not understand it fully for a few videos, but we'll work with you through the whole process to make sure that message is complete. And then, like I said, we'll own the creative. We'll make sure that's a big point for you. Okay, let's make sure that goes up on screen here.
Yeah.
So I think that's kind of that's one of the elements of how to, if they come to us, it's that first part.
Well, and you kind of brought up something that you and I were talking about the other day, and I hate to like oversimplify it, but I think we oftentimes people who do production, you can be into it for the creative, not to say we don't, I mean, I think what we do is creative. I'm not in it for the creative. I'm past the point of like needing to be like fulfilled by like my creative expression through the creation of like a B2B video piece. I want it to be great, but I don't want it to be great for me. I want it to be great for the client.
That's spot on.
Yeah. And so I like to kind of break things down. And you and I were talking about this the other day. I think there's really only like a few different types of videos. So when a client comes and rather than thinking like you're listening to their problem, you're listening to what they're trying to do, and rather than being like, oh, I got this great idea, I saw this ad, and it's like, oh, it'd be so cool to like get this camera and shoot it super slow-mo, or like use a drone. And like sometimes people's brains can just go to the creative expression.
Yeah.
I like to think about it like, okay, well, there's a person talking and telling a story. So that's an interview. There's a voiceover. So we write a script and we craft a story for the client. And then it's either B-roll with graphics or motion design. Right. But that's really the same kind of thing, right?
Yep, exactly.
And then the third one is there's actors portraying something.
Right.
There's really only 3 types of videos. That's it. Yep. So when you're listening to a client, and I think you're kind of alluding to this, like, and I do this too, it's like, you're like, listen to their story, listen to what they're trying to do. You're like, okay, you know, in your head, you're thinking, what is the best way that I can tell the story? Okay, so is this like, is this going to be best like having the creators and like the team on this for this brand like talk about it, or can we? Is it too confusing? We need to craft a narrative, like a message, like a script around this thing,
right?
Or is this like a TV ad where we can do ads and we can think through like actors and like portray something, or even hire actors to go with our script to act out the B-roll like we've done before for some of these B2B brands.
Yeah.
So I think that's, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think you and I were talking about that the other day about how like, just look, let's get out of the weeds and let's just get down to the basics. Like there's really only 3 types of ways that we can tackle this. And so we're almost like very methodical about it, I guess you could say.
Yeah. And I think it's really great that we have people who are driven by that creative expression that are on our team, because that helps kind of, but it adds it later on. I think like what you're talking about is, you know, who, and it kind of boils down to who, and you do a great job with this too, but it's like, who's that audience? What is the person watching this? What are you trying to, you know, what kind of information are you trying to give them? Who's the person watching this? Does the person who, let's say if it is, we have the president of the company is going to talk about this initiative for some shareholders. Does it need to be flashy? Or does it need to be clean, as I always put it? It's just really nice. And it shows to the shareholders that you have, you have excellence in everything you do, including this video. It's just really nice on a white wall with some simple graphics. Or it's something meant to sell your product to the consumer. Maybe it does need to be a little flashy. I mean, that's what we have these conversations in marketing all the time, with marketing here at BP all the time. You don't have much time to, the attention span's not there for the consumer, for the viewer anymore. Yeah. So you don't have a whole lot of time to tell them about whatever product. So maybe it does need to stand out. Those are things that we figure out by figuring out who that audience is. But yeah, at the end of the day, we're getting a camera and we're going to film it that way with these lights on that white wall. Now, what happens in there or how we shoot all that could change based on who that audience is.
Yeah.
But, that's why and we get this just about every other video, even with some of our repeat clients. Can you send me some examples of stuff you've done like that in the past? That's almost exactly what they all say. And that's hard. That's always hard for us because we've done, there's only a few times, and this is usually because it was meant to be like this, but there's only a few times we've done videos that are almost identical.
Yeah.
Every video is so different. But if you're, we do this too, when we're, giving estimates for people or, just some options, is looking for videos that we've done like this. And we're picking out the elements of these videos that are similar to what we're hoping to do for this or what they're asking for. Sometimes we need to make sure the client understands that's why we're showing you this. We're not showing it because it's the same message or the same video, because we've ran into that before. When clients come to us with requests or looking for examples, we show it. And like, oh yeah, that's way too slow of a message.
Yeah.
We want ours to be way more upbeat than that. It's like it's the same video. Yours is just going to be faster.
Yep.
The pacing's going to be different. The message is going to be different. We'll have different things on screen. But I want you to see this video and that video, and yours or both videos. We're hoping to use graphics to get the information across.
Right.
And so that's part of what we need to do. That you should count on us to do is to kind of educate you on why you're seeing these things.
What would you say? What if you had to kind of sum up and say like the top? What's your punch list? Top 5 things you need to consider when you're going to work with an agency, whether it's us or someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So considering everything, so you've got, you've got protecting your budget, you've got protecting your brand, you've got all these things that, I think people are concerned with when they're going to work with an outside agency.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say from a video perspective.
Yeah.
So what would be your punch list? You're giving advice to a friend. What would that be?
Make sure you're ready to do a project.
Be ready.
Yeah. It's going to be hard to say, trust us up front if you've never worked with us before, but understand that that's probably our primary goal up front is to establish that trust. Then open and through that, we'll have that open lines of communication. I think that's probably one of the biggest, I guess, challenge or roadblock that we run into in production is when communication falls apart, or maybe we're rushing to a certain timeline, and then once we hit that timeline, something breaks down and we don't hear from somebody. Mm-hmm. That is, stuff happens, but it's one of those things where I look at it as like we're waiting, and we know that you've got this deadline. We're trying to make that deadline, those kind of things. So we want to make sure the communication lines through the entirety of the project stay open. Mm-hmm. If they can't, maybe you're not ready. Maybe you're not ready to do the project.
Yeah.
I think there's something that ties into that, and it's with the feedback. I think because that's the one place that could be one of the biggest reasons for scope increase is when feedback's not streamlined. And what I mean by that is whenever there's a project that's coming toward maybe a version 1 has been delivered, or even a V2, when we're trying to get the project right in post-production after filming and everything else has been done, it's really important that if we send versions to somebody, they get feedback in, make sure the feedback is constructive, and then make sure the people who are watching this version are the main voices and the main people that need to be watching it. Oftentimes people they would like, and we understand this happens, and we're going to definitely, work through this, but it's really hard whenever we deliver versions, and then we have multiple rounds of feedback come on, because to us, we feel like that's all the feedback. And so we're, okay, great. Well, then let's get it in. Let's get this graphic on it. Let's fix this. And then when we feel like we're delivering the last version, now a new layer of people need to start putting feedback on it.
Yeah.
That is whenever the plan that we had kind of, gets crumpled up and thrown away. Mm-hmm. Have to create a new plan, because now we're going back through. And some of that feedback could be take us backwards in the process, which that usually hurts a lot.
Yeah.
So it's just more in the feedback. Let's streamline it. If you were given delivering a project, how would you want the feedback? That's probably you want it all at once, or as much as you can possibly get at once, so that all the work can be done. And it just helps us really. It ensures that we can hit your deadline. Usually, that's the biggest thing. Mm-hmm. And then it just kind of eliminates some of the stress of walking backwards in a project.
Yeah. No, that's good. Because all those things are really good to consider. Like, we're obviously very flexible when we work with a client to make sure that if they don't, if they're not able to provide everything in the timeline, we still will accommodate it. But there are times when there are changes that can come at the last minute, and it's it's going to affect whether or not this can be delivered. So that's, even if you're not working with us and you're working with another agency, just know the more you can front load all the stakeholders into the conversation of changes. I know it's hard sometimes with people that are higher up or whatever. They don't have a ton of time. If they see something too soon, they might start to get nervous because they're like, we're used to seeing things in the raw phase. You
Yeah.
know, we're making edits. We're like, no, there's going to be graphics on it. Don't worry about it. And they
Right.
see it and they're like, this thing is not even close. You're like, yeah, it's not close because it's a rough cut.
Right. Exactly.
You know, and we're comfortable with that. You know, so you got to kind of understand too that there are certain steps in the process that aren't for certain eyes.
Mhm.
But the more you can get the right people in, the more you can protect that things don't go out of scope. And I'm
Yeah.
not saying for us, because we're always gonna
We're
we're
working on
gonna
it until
honor our price.
We'll deliver the product. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it really is, you know, it's kind of fairness on both sides. But I think that's a great point. What you said is it's almost like early on, let us know how finished this needs to be for that first version. If we're talking about delivering in post-production, because you know, so-and-so has to watch it. They're not going to be able to know that the graphics are supposed to be there. Let's go ahead and make sure the graphics are in.
Yeah.
You know, talk us through that early on. Again, as early as we can get these conversations, then we can create a better plan.
Yeah.
We'd never want to be, you know, we always want to be proactive with everything we do.
Yep. Cool. Awesome. Would you have anything else to add to this one before we wrap it up?
I could talk sponsorship for my son's little league baseball.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
This episode is brought to you by
right. Can we pull up the slide? No,
Kona Ice.
No, I think that was it's a truck. Just can we just with the music? No, I think kind of tying all this up, going back to what I was saying earlier, the goal with this, at least for me, like the heart behind why we wanted to do a video like this, is to kind of peel back the curtain in a way of how we best work. And if we can work as efficiently as I know our team can, we should be able to tell you how to kind of assist on that. We're not just your contractor. You know, we're not just people with cameras ready to go do. We want a partner, and we want this to be a relationship that we provide content for many years to come. And the only way to do that is build the trust and to say, hey, this is the best way we work. Now let's see how that works with your, you know, workflow of how you do things, and let's marry them.
Yep.
So.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you brought this topic up, and hopefully this was helpful for people. Yeah. So as always, if you're enjoying this and you want to hear more content on these subjects, just go and like and subscribe on YouTube, and just tune in anywhere that the podcast streams, and we'll see you next time.